They're good where like you got crosswalk down, where the sign would be, where you don't expect there would be one.
Yeah.
So you hit the button and it's got the little.
Well, I have nothing to do with any of this.
I saw it laying there, I'm gonna ignore
I'm talking more than usage and the speed of it.
it. I just happened to see the title on it. Oh, boy.
Strongly encourage you.
That's great.
Yeah, I would have put it down, but I can't read.
No. George, how are you?
Are you gonna take us on your meeting?
Oh, yeah, what?
How are you? Sorry?
Are you gonna take us on your meeting?
Kind of. Yeah, it's really.
It was just the start. I didn't, you know, they went out there
It's not too bad.
2 o'clock
Yeah,
and walked the whole property.
Do my thing. and then I'll
Okay.
stay over
And I
Okay.
thought about going to that until I went
Okay.
outside. It's just 90 degrees. And I thought,
Sun
can you imagine how many mosquitoes are going
Yeah,
out?
I think he's right. All right. I think so.
George,
How are you?
I'm good, and you?
well, if it makes you feel any better, you know, your friends, you know, nominate you, put you on the list. I had the same thing happen. I didn't go to Preston in July. We were doing all of the election of officers. So I come down, I didn't go that day because I had something else to do and I just wanted to know what was going on, so. 2 other ones went, guess what, I come back, that service officer elected and I wasn't even there. So the day was spent there, in Preston.
They were really impressed with the property. They said there's some of the guys had 4 people there. So it's just how, they just want ideas of what type of facilities or how far I'm
Pretty well, staying out of the miserable weather.
Maybe it could be wind chill.
That would be better.
You got to tell you, my uncle's name, Doug Kenyon. Exact same.
Really?
He was a principal in Farmington. Did you ever hear of another company?
No. And where, Principal, and where?
Farmington, Minnesota?
Farmington? Really?
He lived down in Arizona down
Oh, well, at least you got smart.
there. Yes.
I can't believe that. Oh, really? Oh, darn. I have no family in this area whatsoever. They had you know, I'm the only one.
Where's the rest?
Well, they're in New Ulm, that area there, or else California, so.
And he's from
He is, yeah. You know, we went out,
It was from that.
there's a cemetery out here, Bang, he's going on Highway 56. For Memorial Day, we put out the flags, and it's a Norwegian cemetery. So this was out there, and we, you know, mark off each one wherever it is, call the names in so that they get that flag.
Nothing down there.
Well, I've never seen it.
I didn't realize.
Here
it,
it
but
walks
they
up to
said
a stone, and it's on this side is one name, and there was one back here, so I walked over and I thought, I think I just seen my name on the backside of this stone. So I started around, and this was, one time was a first thing for 2 families to use the same headstone buried on this side and this side. Here it said H-E-N-K-E. I don't know who it was.
It'll have to
Didn't know there was
be-
any urgent in there. But there was
You feel like you were in Scrooge?
Whatever.
He sees his name on the tombstone.
Well, I imagine maybe, you know, this was a long time back, and I imagine money was hard to get, so there was a number of them after I started looking, so I made it a point now
Hi, Richard.
to look, see if there's 2 names on the
Have you
stone.
seen him since?
Out there I did, but I haven't any other place, really haven't been to any other place, but I'm sure to make that point.
No.
Is he retired out there then?
Yes.
Okay.
Flagstaff.
Flagstaff? Oh, this is cool. Or,
I'll have to ask him where in California.
yeah, I was up in Bakersfield 38 years.
My wife's
Best friend moved out there a year ago.
Bakersfield?
It's so hot. They're financial. Oh.
You got used to it. That's why when you see today, it's not too bad.
hardly anybody knew that system.
How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you? No. Well, I called in service.
I just got I got it right here. Here it is. Well, here it is what I wanted. Sometimes they think it's best to keep it right in the book.
Yeah. Trying to take it out of these same numbers. I don't have a phone. Slide away.
I saw you.
You then have to bring the book back in. Yeah. Yeah, anyway.
Where's it?
Yeah.
You know that his second half was supposed
Yeah.
Joe, want an agenda?
Well, that's what I always thought.
Thank you. You're welcome. You walk right by and forget it every time. But you're younger than I am.
I thought we were the same age. I'll be 50 this year. You'll be 50 this year?
Gave the guy one card.
Nearly double.
Get rest of put down here. And it didn't sound familiar to me.
As you know.
If you're just here to kind of hear.
He brushed
About this.
Yeah, you just get up and say something.
Well.
No, it's just
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And that being done, we'll call the August 10th, 2016 City Council meeting to order. All council members present, Administrator Paulson, Engineer Ryan, Attorney Biggs. Citizens' comments. Do we have anyone who would like to,
Yes.
Wayne would like to address the council?
Council and Honor Mayor, I did give copies of these to the city administrator, hopefully he passes on to people.
Yes.
And you had a chance to read it, it's pretty straightforward. The sign that would be placed on, basically would be where the freight part of the current station is here. I don't know if the city's got a copy of it, might we have up there.
I've got to get with you and we'll get that put up.
Probably.
Our goal was to have it done before Rose Fest, so we've still got a little bit of time.
Maybe I can get some friends from the American Legion or get a, it's not that difficult.
I was gonna go talk to Don about it also.
Okay. Anyhow, it's really, the beginning of a project was to identify the station and how important it was in the early days, even up to the 1970s. And you could take a train from here if you wanted to go to St. Paul. I think it cost about $8, probably a lot of money. The next step that I want to do is call the Friends of the of the depot, our friends of the station. And what we're trying to do is form a volunteer group of people who have lived previous, to when the station was closed up. And the long-term goal there is to try to collect artifacts, things like schedules, maybe signs and stuff that were typical, or they found on that station, and to place them, maybe perhaps behind screens or behind plexiglass windows in the station. The thought being is to have an open house at the station, show them what we've done, what it was all about, and try and get some interest in doing that. But the third step is to hold a train show. Train shows in Minnesota are as common as mosquitoes. They have lots of them everywhere. One not terribly far from here. They're in their 12th year. It's a home run for the town. You get the average turnout, 200-300 men with money in their pockets. And most every business, if you're selling gas, if you're selling food, if you're going to, if you're the trains, you have other parts and stuff, used to repair trains, that's not even talking about. We used to own a train store. It will benefit the town.
Anything that brings traffic in town helps, yes.
That's the long-term goal, is so that when you go to your website, things just in Kenyon are two things right now. The house, and what else? There was, you got your two events, the upcoming event.
The Rose Fest
And then the winter event. And what we're trying to give is, men in particular spend not thousands, but millions of dollars on toy trains in the United States. There's over 200 train shows in Minnesota alone. So the game on that is to create this volunteer group, work carefully with the mayor, with the city administrator, and when they feel comfortable about it, then they'd like to approach the council. Here's what we've done. We'd like to have an open house, picnic type of thing, and then at that point talk about having a train show. The train shows, most successful ones are held in November, because it's right before Christmas. Okay, so that's the game plan. That's what we're going to try and do.
Okay, I've got two questions for you, Wayne.
Yes.
First, have you gotten any other people involved in this yet?
One.
It's a start.
Okay, but no, just.
And two, have you spoken to the newspaper, the leader?
Yes, they're well appointed. A copy of this went to them, and I was going to try and get with Mary on that, and then we'll submit it, and hopefully it will come up like an article
Okay.
showing the station and what's going on and what we're trying to do. And I understand it's a slow process.
And I guess the third question would be, what, if anything, are you asking from us here tonight? Just
Keep to the voice, but maybe tomorrow go look around on the inside and see what it looks like. I haven't been in the building. That's
well,
all.
that's what you need to do then.
Okay, so thank you for your time. I'll be busy. I've done this before, by the way, so I might be able to do it. And we're going to like it all. We'd like to have another event, bring people to town, see them. This is really a good town. I've lived in a lot of different cities. I like it a lot better than almost all of them I've lived in before. I lived in Chicago. There's more people on the damn freeway in Chicago than probably live in this county and the next one. But I really do like the people, and I like to help out. We'll keep the city administrator and you, the council, advised of our progress. And it'll take time.
Well, thank you, Wayne. I hope this snowballs into something big. Anyone else? Being none, then are there any additions or corrections to the agenda? Do we have a motion to adopt the agenda as printed?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Consent agenda. Is there anything that should be removed from consent agenda, or a motion to accept it as is?
So moved.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
And that motion passes. We have no recognitions, public hearings, presentations, etc. So we can move on to item 7, engineering. Update on First Street reconstruction project.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In your packet is a memo that we prepared with some attachments. I'll review that before you're here. Update since the last council meeting over the past 4 weeks. The construction has been completed. The main activity since the last council meeting was placing the final 1.5-inch layer of the blacktop surfacing, and that went down on July 15th and turned out pretty well. If you've been over there to look at the
Oh,
road,
it's excellent.
it looks pretty nice. We did issue a punch list on the project. Contractors have come through and has finished most of that work. There's just a couple outstanding items we need to work with them to make sure they get tied up, a couple of loose ends. In terms of the sanitary sewer services, I know the administrator and I had talked about that, and he wanted to get a handle on how the services came out there. As you know, one of the big issues with that project was the private sewers that we were replacing. And so we wanted to identify which homes were reconnected to the new city sewer that we had installed, and which ones were still served by private sewers and needed to still be connected. So we did put together that summary that's included with the memo. We broke it down into 3 different categories of properties. The first category was properties that were already served by a public sewer. There's a public sewer in the alley to the south of First Street. There's also public sewers, city sewers that run north-south in Spring Street and Forest Street. And so there were a handful of the properties that we found were already served by those public sewers and didn't need service from our project. The next category were properties that were served by a private sewer before our project began, but through the course of the project we were able to reconnect them to the new city sewer that we installed down the center of First Street. And there were 9 properties we were able to accomplish that as part of the project. And that leaves the third category, which is those properties that were served by a private sewer before our project began and are still served by a private sewer. There have been stubs, service stubs from the new city main in First Street extended out to their property line, but because of the way their current plumbing was configured going out the side or the back of the house, their service doesn't currently come out towards First Street, so we weren't able to reconnect it with the project. And so if you look, there's a map included at the back of the summary, and on that we've colored in green those 8 properties that are still connected to the private sewer and will need to be connected to the new sewer stub to connect them to the public sewer. 7 of them are located on the north side of First Street, 5 of them in the block between Red Wing and Forest, and 2 in the block between Forest and Spring. There's one property on the south side of First Street, which is 515, and that's a little bit of a unique situation in that they're not currently connected to a private sewer. The situation, though, we found was their existing service, they connected a joint service with their neighbors in 509 and came out towards First Street. So we connected that joint service to the new city sewer. So technically both those houses are connected to city sewer, but they're connected jointly. There is a separate, correct, there is a separate stub that's been installed for 515. And so they can connect their service to that separate sewer stub, and then each home will have it.
Which is what the current standard is.
Correct, yeah. So that's why they've been indicated as in that same category, that there's a stub there that they'll need to connect to at some point. So those are the 8 properties that will still need to be connected to the new sewer in First Street that was installed as part of the project. I can pause for any questions on that issue before I go on with the rest of the report.
What has been the feedback from those 8 homeowners about getting connected by?
Well, and I think, yeah, that's where I would turn to the administrator. I think the administrator indicated that he had sent out a letter to those property owners to advise them of the situation.
Right, we haven't heard, the only person we've talked to is Mr. Westfall about hooking in, but we haven't heard from anybody else along there. I mean, this is standard, according to the ordinance, and this type of project is that these people will hook into their sewer. So they've got, instead of 14 days or 30 days, now they've got till November, so they've got more time. But we haven't heard from any of them, and I'm sure they will have to follow up with some of them that, for various reasons, either don't get the letter or But we haven't heard anything yet, except that she was.
And what happens if they don't hook up by November? Do we do the hookup and charge them, or what?
Well, ultimately, that's what would happen.
Yeah.
Whether, the timing of that, I can't really say. I don't know, Scott, you can probably answer that better. What happens if they don't hook up?
I mean, our code requires they are supposed to hook up. I mean, it's a matter of, can you force? Well, yeah, you can.
You can, but you don't want to.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's a process, it costs money, it takes staff and effort to do. So it's not the situation on me, I guess that's what it
Yeah. All right.
is. Yeah, it's not a great answer, but can you force it?
Ultimately, you have the power to shut off water, and then they can't use what they have.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, and it's, one thing I should mention too regarding the sewer service is that all the properties out there are currently served. So there's no one that's not currently served.
Right.
They're all either served by the new public sewer, or by an existing public sewer that they're already connected to, or by the private sewers that are still in place.
Now, those private lines that they're connected to, can that be abandoned now, or are there still other properties that are connected to that?
Well, that we need to verify, because we haven't researched the other properties beyond, say on the other side of the alley, to see if there's any others connected. Once these all were connected, all these ones on the north side of First Street, then we could identify if there aren't any others connected to that private line could be abandoned.
Because one of the big reasons for trying to rationalize the system, besides maintenance, is I. And if this private line stays in service with fewer connections to it, you actually have potential for more infiltration.
Yeah, certainly the best would be if we could disconnect it from our system and just permanently plug it.
Right.
Correct. So that's probably something that we'll be talking about maybe, well, by the time everyone gets connected this fall, it'd probably be something that we look at in the spring to see if that line is then totally out of use. It could be abandoned. A couple other things on the project. We do have a partial payment request that's included in the packet for tonight. It's payment request number 4. That would be payment to the contractor. The identified amount is $33,792.16. This is not the final payment. As you know, we track the construction quantities as they're building it. Of course, it's still today. We're going to be meeting next week to go through our records and see where we've got discrepancies and make sure we come to agreement on all of the quantities. And I think council may be aware, I know the administrator is aware, that there was some rock that was encountered during the sanitary sewer excavation, some hard rock that they had to bring in a special piece of equipment to break up the rock. And that was not accounted for in the original project, so we've got to agree to the value of that. And we'll bring that to the city council as a change order once we've finalized all the quantities. So I anticipate bringing that to you at the next council meeting in
And the
September.
request was how much?
The pay request? Current pay request is $33,792.16. So looking forward, we hope to have the final prices, the final construction prices all set by the end of this month, so then we can bring, we'll know the final costs for the September meeting, whether or not we actually final out the project, seeing if they've got all their punch list items done, if they have their tax forms and everything completed. But we'll have the cost determined, so then we can determine the assessment amounts, and then at the September meeting, we can come with the resolutions to declare the amount to be assessed, call for the public hearing, and schedule that to occur on the evening of October 11th. And so on October 11th, we would have the assessment hearing, review the final cost, review the assessments to each individual property, and then, assuming everything's in order, then the council could adopt that role, that assessment role that evening on October 11th.
So, Joe, I don't think they've got the pay request.
No.
Oh.
So,
Yeah, that's why I asked.
Do you need my copy? Any copies?
Yeah.
I do.
I always print my own copies of my memos, but, to have them. Well, I guess it's not in the packet. Well, while we're waiting for the administrator, are there any other questions or comments on the First Street project that I could answer?
Well, we could move on to the update on the fire facility project while we're waiting for him.
Certainly, I know there is a couple of things in this he wants to participate in discussion on, but I can update you on the main activities since the last council meeting. As you recall, just before the last council meeting, we received word from the USDA that they agreed with the contract award with the base bid and alternate 1 and alternate 4. So we did prepare the contract documents. We reviewed them with the city attorney to make sure he was comfortable with the form of the documents. Then on July 21st, we transmitted 6 hard copies of the contract to the contractor. They signed the notice of award right away and emailed it back to us to acknowledge they received the contracts, and then they went to work filling out their parts. They transmitted the completed contracts over to the city attorney on August 1st, and I know I'm talking, I think they transmitted the first, showed up at your office on the 2nd. And so I know I've been talking with the attorney, and he had a handful of comments as of early this week, but all fairly manageable.
As of today, I don't have the documents back, but as to performance and payment bonds, there were a few things that weren't filled out right, knowledge right, things like that to make it, they're all technical issues that have to be done. So we got them correct, so they're enforceable. As of the end of the day, the last documents I saw, at least computer-wise, are all right. We don't have them back in hand, but as soon as we do, we'll be able to compile and put it together, and we should be ready to get the contracts then fully acceptable.
So in anticipation of that, we've been working, the USDA has a required list of people that have to attend the pre-construction conference before we can actually issue the notice to proceed and allow the contractor to start. And so we've been trying to coordinate calendars with the USDA representatives, the contractor, the architect, city staff. And as of Monday, we identified next Wednesday, August 17th at 3 p.m. is the time that we've set for the pre-construction conference. 17th at 3 p.m. And that'll be held here at City Hall. So the USDA needs to sign off on the contracts. They're not a party to the contracts, but their signature on the contract basically means that they review the contracts, make sure all the right forms are in there, make sure both the city and the contractor have signed it in all the proper places. We'll send the USDA representative an electronic version of the contract ahead of time so she can review it. In talking with her, she said typically what happens is when she attends the pre-construction conference, as long as she's reviewed the contract ahead of time, everything's ordered, she'll sign the contract right at the pre-construction conference, and then we can immediately upon completion of the contract, pre-construction conference, we can sign the notice to proceed and hand it to the contractor that day. So technically, we're having the pre-construction conference at 3 p.m. on August 17th. Assuming everything's in place, they could, in theory, start work on the morning of the 18th. So I don't know yet if that's what they're going to do. I know they're very anxious to start the project because they want to make sure they get all the work in the ground before.
They could have their equipment sitting here in town waiting to start that.
They could, yeah. They're obviously aware of the schedule. They've accepted the meeting for the 17th, so everything's lining up for start of construction
I
potentially.
know they have expressed some concern about necessarily being able to meet the completion date.
Well, their concern at this point is the item with the biggest lead time is the precast concrete panels.
Correct.
And so they've already, lined up with the supplier to have those panels prepared, even though, we don't officially have a signed contract yet. And right now, the target date that the supplier's going to cast those panels is October, the early part of October, and they would be delivered to the site like the 15th of October. So the contractor estimates he's got between 6 and 8 weeks worth of work to get done before he's ready for those panels to arrive. So if you look at the calendar, August 18th and go out 8 weeks, that puts you like at October 13th. So there's not much wiggle room. So they're anxious to get started so that they can get a lot of the underground work and their grading and be ready for when the panels are ready to show up on site. So, of course, fingers crossed that we don't get, early snows or bad weather that would delay things. too much, but, so that's the biggest concern. And unfortunately, you look at it, we took bids on June 8th, so it essentially took 2 months to get from the day we took the bids until the contracts were done. And, now they have essentially the same amount of time from when they're gonna start work until the precast panels will show up, so. With the extra layer of the USDA being involved in the project, it did add some time to processing the contracts, but I think in the long run, it's obviously for the benefit of the city and the project.
We
So,
can't start anyway until after all the underground is in the first place.
right.
And if it weather, rains, something.
Yeah, and so we've assured the contractor that, obviously, if there are documented, substantial conditions that cause delays in the schedule, that we certainly are going to be reasonable in reviewing those with them.
Where every bit is anxious as they.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And the contract allows for either the owner, the architect, or the engineer, or the contractor to identify conditions. If something causes that makes them feel they should extend them, if we feel there's something that, is cause for, we want them to take more time to get things done, because we feel some conditions are not quite appropriate, we can ask for an extension as well. So the contract allows either the owner, the architect, or the contractor to raise those concerns, and if there's agreement, then we could extend the schedule by a change. But of course, as of right now, we're not going to entertain.
Yeah.
No, not unless there's something that triggers that discussion. So I believe that's pretty much everything on the project that brings you up to date. The one thing that occurred to me, and the administrator and I were talking before the meeting, is whether or not the city wishes to do something like an official groundbreaking ceremony for the project. Obviously, there'll be a ribbon cutting when the building's complete, but if you wanted to do something like a groundbreaking, now would be the time to consider that, because the contractor, really the week of the August 22nd, for sure, they'll be up and running full speed. They may even be up and running full speed by the end of next week. So it's certainly not necessary, but we just wanted to make sure that we had that we raised an issue there, just in case you had any thoughts about that.
I certainly see no reason to make a big ceremony of it. Everyone knows what's going on. I was over in Wanamingo today, to get my car in for some alignment work. Go pay the bill. Well, when are you going to be getting started on that new fire hall? Everybody knows.
That's, yeah, the bigger deal will be the ribbon cutting when the building's actually
Absolutely.
ready to be moved in.
Absolutely.
I agree. Okay, well, good enough then. Then that completes my update on the fire station project. Unless
Mark, you
there are
have
any
anything to
questions.
add?
Joe, did you talk about doing some kind of groundbreaking?
Yeah, it's registered.
Yeah, just got done.
Like setting a date, though, specifically to?
Oh, no, council indicated they don't see the need for it.
Okay,
So,
I did, at least.
yeah,
well, yeah, okay, that's fine. So we'll let you guys, I'll let you guys know, Mike will be there for sure, but if anybody else is interested, let me know. I'll let you know when the date is or email you. So, okay. Sounds good.
all right. If there's no other questions on the fire station project, then we could go back
Backtrack to
to
the
the pay request for First Street.
I'll make a motion to pay, pay request $33,793.16.
Second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passed.
Thank you, council. That completes my report, unless there are any further questions.
And that being done, we would move on to legal. Item 8. Scott, update on property abatement at 411 Bullis Street.
Yeah, you have in your packet, Mark's memorandum discusses what efforts were done in doing the property, and maybe the chief can update where it's at and now what we would do when a report actually is produced.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I met with the building inspector, Mr. Balsing, and we made a plan to go on site and look at it, and we had a little hiccup with the renters, squatters, whatever you like to call them, with getting permission. We explained the urgency of this, and the one gentleman said, fine, just come and you can come and do it. They said, we can't keep putting this off. So I'm still waiting to hear from Doug to see what date works for him. But the plan is he will show up and we'll just go on site and complete the inspection. So that's where we're at with it. I'm just trying to get it done and my schedule lined up.
Any estimate of when, how soon this might happen?
I will call Doug again tomorrow. I'm sorry I didn't get it done this week. It's been very busy for me as well. But I will call him tomorrow and get a date lined up in the next week. So I'll get it done before Rose Fest when things start to pick up. So that is our plan. And the gentleman that I spoke to said, yep, then just show up and we'll just do it. So I know they've had some other issues with the retaining walls they were building. They got a letter from the neighboring property saying the wall's got to come down, and he said he will work on that as well. So it's okay. But I do stop quite frequently to see where we're at with things. And I'm just trying to get the building inspector and get this going.
I know, I hear reports that, oh, they were up there again today.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm there quite frequently.
And once there's a report, then it's a determination of whether it's a nuisance action, if it's necessary, or something beyond that. But we obviously need the report. We talked about that last month. Obviously, we haven't gone the route of any type of administrative type search warrant. If the name will get in there, it's a matter of coordinating the schedules at this point. So this is the necessary step, and it obviously hasn't costed anything except for staff time at this point.
And they were receptive after they were at the meeting and we kind of
Right.
explained.
And
the
they
importance of
understood
this.
that it wasn't a matter of immediate eviction.
Yeah. And we explained to them that, you know, once it's looked at, the inspector will make his determination as far as for what steps need to be taken next. And I explained to them I don't have that authority or ability, I don't know about that thing, so. That's where we're at with it. Thank you.
So then we move on to item B under legal, ordinance 82, third series, opting out of requirements of Minnesota statutes, section 462.3593, dealing with temporary family health care dwellings. We discussed this at the last meeting. I think everyone is on board with it. This came up at the municipalities meeting. Several other cities are going through this same thing. I mentioned to some of them that you're looking at a looming deadline here. You need to light a fire under everybody and get it done now.
And Mayor, the only thing I've added to this, and I'll give the final draft to Pam for signature and everything, but I did insert a section under 510.13, so it'll actually be part of the city's code, so people will be able to see that there was an opt-out provision and the council adopted. It won't be some mysterious ordinance that doesn't appear. So we have the number of 510.13 that's in the number of the ordinance.
So,
Do you need a motion on
we need a motion and we need a roll call vote.
that? Okay, I will make that a motion that we opt out according to ordinance 82, the third series.
Second. Go ahead. Second.
Okay, so then you start a roll call with Doug and down the line.
I'm for it.
There.
Aye.
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 Motion passes. Is that all, Pam? Lot combination request from Kenyon Ace Hardware. And this is a matter of putting his existing lot that contains the building along with the section that he purchased from the city. And I believe there's another little sliver in between there. You combine them all into one lot, and that's simply good sense. I need to do that myself. I have a situation of 3 little lots that I need to combine. So, motion to approve the lot So moved. Second?
Who seconded it?
Oh, okay, Doug second. All in favor? Aye. Now, the one that I'm not sure I understand fully,
All right.
partition fence law revision. This is basically a situation where they took something that made sense in a farm.
Very old
Environment
statute, yeah,
and-
very old statute's been on the books for many years, been modified a few times. Actually, it's a section of statutes, chapter 344, there's about 15 different sections within it. It really applies to fences that are post barbed wire type fences is what it is. It's been utilized in some urbanized communities a couple times. And in fact, I have one city that got an application yesterday for this, even though the council's opting out of it tonight. So it's kind of an interesting case. It has come up a few times. What's unique is cities were obligated to perform certain tasks, which are fence viewing and I guess I'll say mediate, but it's really decide disputes between two neighboring property owners as to value and who should pay what for that fence. And so there's a lot of requirements and conditions and ways and types of fences that can be done. And honestly, they're typically not the types of fences you see nowadays with, in a city like this where you have a chain link fence or a privacy fence or something like that. That's really not what's talked about in the statute, so it's somewhat misapplied in some cases. It came up in a very significant and costly case up in the metro area. The league went in their last legislative session and asked the legislature to allow cities to opt out or in certain circumstances for properties under 20 acres. Townships always have the ability to do that. So really what it did is it allowed cities to now do what towns do. So it's my recommendation to avail ourselves of this statute. It doesn't mean the city doesn't have fence control, but it does not require a fence viewer, which would be one of you 5 members of the council, to have to go out and somewhat mediate, arbitrate, decide a dispute between two neighboring property owners, and incur the cost and time for that. Some costs are recoverable, it's usually not 100%, but it's just an obligation that worked better in a different time, and probably works much better in a township setting, or maybe, I suppose there could be situations that applies here still, but it really wasn't. It was to put up fences between large acreage for cattle runs and things like that, to cover that type of situation. So it's a very old statute,
Now,
very old.
I may be wrong, but in my understanding of this being applied in a city, you could end up with a situation where you have adjoining property owners. One wants to have a fence, the other one doesn't really care, but the one who wanted the fence could force his neighbor to pay for part of the cost of it.
That's what the statute does, yes. That's absolutely what it does, and then it puts one of you in a position of making that decision, if you don't opt out.
Not only that, but what kind of a fence? I want a board fence and the other one wants a block wall.
Yeah.
My
And,
son has the same thing in Bakersfield right now they're dealing with.
and exactly where is that going to be sited relative to the property line?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
So this resolution 2016-19 resolves this.
It does, it takes the city out of that equation and exempts us from having to be fence viewers. So I would recommend.
I'll make a motion that we pass resolution 2016-19.
And I will second your motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank heaven, that sounds like a
Yeah.
can of worms we
Yeah.
wouldn't want to get involved in.
No, I don't think so.
What can make enemies in a hurry?
Oh, make enemies of neighbors and make us new enemies that we didn't have before.
Create a lot of
Oh, yeah.
headaches for Scott too.
Well,
Well, at least he can get paid for it.
well, but it's one of those that it doesn't make sense in the
No,
times we're
it
in.
does
It
not.
does not make sense.
Does not. Then we move on to section 10, old business, resolution 2016-22, resolution awarding the sale of general obligation loan anticipation notes, series 2016B. And where do you have information for us?
Yes, Mayor and members of the council, there should be a bond sale report in front of you on the table, and a resolution in your packet, as noted in the agenda. We've talked about it several meetings about the interim financing for the fire hall project.
Yes.
And that's what this financing is. It's, the resolution in your packet, approval of that will award the sale of these bonds, or they're called notes tonight, general obligation loan anticipation notes. And so you would lock in an interest rate tonight. The bonds or the notes are dated September 1st. So that's the date that interest would begin. As well, that's the closing date, so that's the date that money's available. You would be, this is on page 4 of the handout, the final page of the handout. The interest rate that you'll be considering locking into tonight is 0.9%. So again, favorable interest rates on short-term borrowing. This is a 1-year financing. The city reserves the right, the call date, that's the date when you can prepay or exit the financing early without penalty, is 6 months after the date of the bond. So March 1st of 2017 and any date thereafter. So if the project gets done early or gets done, for example, first part of June, and USDA would like to go to loan closing where you convert to long-term financing with them, this would allow that. So that's the highlights, Mayor and Council. Short of it is 0.9% interest rate, and you get the money September 1st. Any questions that I can address?
It's a lot of paperwork to tell us.
Pardon me?
See, it's a lot of paperwork to tell us that. You made it real short and simple. I'm trying to go through this.
Attorneys and accountants generate paperwork. End of story.
And city council.
That's actually a pretty short report.
It is.
Yeah.
For a bond sale that
That's
big.
He was looking at
That's true.
all the things.
Yeah.
And I could talk longer with you.
I like the nice simple version.
Yep.
That's good.
And I would like to call for a motion approving resolution 2016-22.
I would be happy to make that motion.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, sir. Now. Moving on to new business. 316 and 318 Kenyon Road drainage issues. Who's going to take this one?
I'll start. We received a letter from Rand and Connie Woodland and Gary and Judy Pavick, who are the two homes that are, that wrote this letter. They, basically, I won't go through the letter, but they've had issues, and I'm trying to paraphrase the letter without reading it verbatim, with, they feel they've had issues with water runoff from Bergen Circle and Bergen Road. And basically, they are asking the city for some type of relief to help address the problem. They also made reference to basically that there was some discussion on the city doing something when Kenyon Road was reconstructed. Basically, that is, I have not been able to really find anything real clear on that. There was also some reference to the fact that could have been, there could have been reference to that being assessed, and they weren't interested in, paying because they felt that wasn't their responsibility caused by outside sources, et cetera. So, basically, as I said in my memo, there's two parts to this thing in broad sense. Basically, as I said, the property owners are requesting the city provide some type of storm drainage where they've experienced drainage issues. Letters in your packet. The properties are located north of Trunnion Road and east of Bergen Circle. The Woodland House was constructed sometime after the original Bergen Circle was constructed, and then subsequently was reconstructed in 1999. The property owners have experienced drainage down the hill because Bergen Circle is up at a higher elevation. And we've included the plan sheet from the original project. Basically, without going into great detail, and Joe can answer this more specifically if need be, when Bergen Circle was reconstructed in 1999, it was actually lowered, and that crown of that cul-de-sac was actually somewhat lower than the original street. There was also 2 drainage outlets that were installed at that time. Now, the owners have told myself and the city engineer that when that was reconstructed, the drainage actually got worse. Now, in looking at the drainage plan sheets, again, Joe can get into more detail of this, that fact that that street was reconstructed actually should have reduced that a little bit. It wasn't a lot lower, but it certainly would not have, from what the plan sheet show, would not have made that drainage worse. The city engineer and I met with property owners on the site sometime back, and we've observed, and you have pictures of this, that there's standing water at the bottom of the hill. This summer's been very wet, unfortunately, because we've got a high amount of rainfall. The water has most likely originated from Bergen Circle and run down that hill. So basically, when I summarize this, and I think Joe will talk a little more about this here when I'm done with this summary. There's 2 parts to this. The first claim, as far as the 1999 improvements making the area drainage worse, cannot be, I don't think, substantiated. The elevation of the street was actually lowered. Bergen Circle was surmountable curb, and as such, the water historically would have always flown over and down the hill. As part of that project, there was some drainage ways that were installed to help funnel the water in about 3 different directions, and Joe will get into this. You have in that information, or those satellite shots there, is what I'm trying to say, that Joe put together. You can see there's pictures of that, of where those are. So that would be the first claim. The second claim, the city offered to install some type of storm drainage during Trunnion Road improvements. There's really no way we can verify this, and if the city did make such an offer, was it a straight up offer to do something, and B, were assessments involved or suggested to help offset this cost, and if so, did these property owners say that or the property owners in that area said they weren't interested? So the second claim, we really can't substantiate that, one way or another, because it was, 20 years ago, or, a little bit less than that. So, I mean, that part of it we can't really substantiate. So, but options that I talk about are financing improvements, and this has nothing taken into account any legal or easements or anything like that, but theoretically the city's options would be to either try to do some type of grading, tile type of installation, and the city pay for those improvements, or out of the stormwater fund, or assessing part or all of those costs back to the property owners. And that's with any type of project where there's a storm sewer component to it. Again, that's got nothing to talk about the specifics of this land, how we would go on there, if we'd have to get an easement, if we'd have to buy, things like that. If we have to cross other properties, with those people, be willing to cooperate, short of forced city action, those kind of things can't be answered. But anyway, Joe, go ahead.
Well, I think the city administrator covered it pretty well. My input here that I would offer is that, obviously I wasn't the city engineer in 1999, so I don't know what Bergen Circle looked like before it was reconstructed. From what I can see from the plan sheet though that I've looked at, the actual surface area of the street itself was made smaller. in the reconstruction project. So the surface area got smaller after it was reconstructed. And when I look at where the high point of the road was before the project and after the project, it's essentially in the same spot. So the actual amount of area from the public street contributing drainage to the cul-de-sac was slightly smaller after the project in 1999 than before it was completed. Now, what I don't know is how the water left the cul-de-sac in 1999. I don't know if it just went out everywhere, if there was curbs there or not. What you can see now is, when you go up to the cul-de-sac, there's two specific spots where there's been spillways put in the curb. So the water leaves the cul-de-sacs at two specific locations. And then an aerial photograph that I put together today and distributed here tonight, I've got those two indicated on the aerial photograph. You can see there's one on either side of that concrete driveway. I'm not sure what the address of that house is in the cul-de-sac, but the one on what would be the south side of that driveway, the water flows over that spillway, essentially down the lot line between those two homes, and flows south towards Trunnion Road, eventually making its way towards Trunnion Road. Unfortunately, on its way there, it crosses the property. I believe the address is 318 Trunnion Road, and it crosses their property on its way to Trunnion Road, and also comes out the driveway of 318.
316.
360. So causing some inconvenience for those property owners. The spillway, the northern spillway in the cul-de-sac, that water essentially flows down the lot line between those two homes and ultimately flows north towards the drainage away from Trunnion. So the drainage essentially flows in two different directions. The southerly flows south towards Trunnion Road, the north flows to the north. So the drainage coming off those spillways the street drainage is functioning the way it was intended to function. And all I can say from what I can see of the 1999 plan is that the volume, the area, the contributing area of the drainage was made smaller, so the corresponding volume of runoff should be equal to or less than it was before the road was reconstructed.
Varying, of course, with whatever the weather
Sure, yeah.
was in that period of time.
Yeah.
The bottom line is that stormwater causing a problem.
Yes.
Right. So then,
Who's at fault? What promises might have been made, that's all a matter of speculation.
well, I think another question that needs to be answered here too, and the city attorney probably has some thoughts on it, is, when you talk about a drainage problem, there's varying degrees of a problem. If there's a problem that's causing, real property damage where structures are being flooded, that's a certain type of problem that needs to be obviously taken very seriously and addressed very promptly. If you've got a drainage problem that's causing, a potential safety hazard or a threat to the public, that obviously needs to be addressed very promptly. So, those are certain measuring sticks you can use, on the severity of the drainage problem. Because really what it comes down to is, the ultimate question of the property owners feel they have a problem. What's the severity of the problem, and what is the responsibility to correct that problem? Is the responsibility to lie with the city or not? If the city, obviously the city could choose to do improvements to try and make that drainage situation better. And as the administrator indicated, you could do some overland grading to try and develop defined swales to carry the water in directions you want it to go. You could try and install some underground storm sewer, which may be possible. Bergen Circle sits higher, so we should be able to get the water to go from Bergen Circle down to Trunnion Road. I'm not sure exactly where the storm sewers that we'd be able to connect into, but there's probably some type of underground option that you could develop. But as the administrator indicated, it would take some expenditures to, number one, develop the solution and then implement the solution. And part of the obstacle in implementing the solution would be that you don't have easements out there to get onto those properties to be able to install whatever improvements you want to do. So that's really the information I would have to add to the administrator's report. I don't know if the attorney has any further comments regarding the issue of the responsibility of the city, whether or not it's required to step in and address the issue.
I'd say there's two things here. How big a problem is it, and how big of an expense would it be to ameliorate? And I don't have answers to either of those.
Who's gonna pay for it? Another one.
And I think another thing, when you look at this, if the city was in some form, participate or do something with this, I think the focus is Bergen Circle. If that's, where the water comes from, the focus is not the whole, because there could be water coming there from other areas that feed down into that. We don't know that. You haven't done any kind of study into that. And the city's responsibility, or I'm not saying that we have responsibility, but the city's focus could be Bergen Circle, and there's no storm sewer in Bergen Circle, and there never has been.
Correct.
That's a whole nother, big expense, a whole nother situation, but that's really, as you look at this, and I don't mean to say focus by saying the city's responsibility or not responsible. What I'm saying is whatever is looked at, Bergen Circle, that's where the public street is, and if there's water coming off the public street, that's what the focus would be. I don't think the focus, as I look at this, probably should be working on their private property or, their hill. I think it's more if something's coming off there, but again, that's never been, there's never been storm sewer. There was not storm sewer before they built. There's not storm sewer now. Wherever that comes into play, I don't know, but I'm just saying that that's what the...
Right. Really, if the city were going to take a project, right now you had an existing condition that was out there before you reconstructed the street. And then you reconstructed the street, which essentially perpetuated that same situation where it's overland flow and it's coming off these two spillways. If the city were going to take a project at this time, it would be to change how you're managing that water that comes off the public street. That's what the goal would be. It wouldn't be any larger in scope than that.
Yeah, and the issue really becomes is working in the city's usable right of way. And the city did that. And so I don't know timing.
Can I ask you to repeat what you just said? I didn't hear it.
Okay, no, that's fine. The city's usual obligation is to and did what it had to do regarding the reconstruction of Bergen Street. And you need to work, any type of work that the city does has to be in a public right of way. You can't work in private lands. You don't have the authority to do that and to expend dollars to do things on private property. We just lack the authority. The legislature hasn't given that to the city to do. Now, and Joe was trying to touch on this, that from the standpoint of what you have here and what I've seen, at least initially in some very brief conversations, the city did a management of the water, which it's entitled to do, and once the water was managed in the Bergen Circle area, that's the end of that obligation. Where the water goes, you attempt to do it in certain areas, and that's what was done with the swales that were at least initially there, or the, what would you call them? Spillways that are on the circle. Now, I don't know when any of the other homes that were, I would say, downstream or downflow were constructed, but that's what needs to be taken into account on private property, is where any drainage is, or if there's any other easements that are usable for swaling that or making that flow go in certain ways. If there are easements there, which I don't know if there are, certainly the city could assist, and that's what Joe and Mark were talking about before, that there's some things that may be there, but then it becomes a public improvement project if there's a utility or drainage utility area that can be used. If not, it can't be a public improvement project. We don't have anything that can be done to rectify that. The biggest issue is whether or not this would have or would constitute a public improvement project. Certainly, you could work within anything on Bergen Circle, as Mark discussed. Whether or not you would start constructing a full-blown storm sewer system, you have to evaluate the costs and benefits there. And again, what Joe was explaining to me is the actual use that was on Bergen Circle before has been less than what was there initially. So the reconstruct actually took away some of the flow, and that was what was intended to be done.
And another question that comes to mind is, what was the drainage situation before all of this construction was done? Where was the water that fell there going before these, the street and the homes were put in?
Well, and again, I don't know, the water law in Minnesota is basically that water has and follows its normal course, and that's where water can be dispensed. So that's why I say the management of the urban circle only gets it over to where it may have been flowing, and if that flow back in 1999 was allowed, it's still allowed now. Can you modify that? Sure, if there's a way to swale. I don't know if there is, I don't know if it's cost effective, I don't know if you can do some drain tile or some type of storm sewer that would allow that to flow a certain different way. That may be possible, then it becomes a cost, then it becomes whether or not it can be a public improvement project.
And another thing too to keep in mind is that there's houses to the west of them that are causing drainage issues down that hill. So to say that it's all 100% street, 100% city is not correct from that standpoint either. And there may be other properties that are contributing to, and that becomes a civil, private matter when one property drains onto another.
Right.
But that's part of this scenario.
Yeah.
There's no two ways about it. There's a property to the west that I've also had contact with, and I know some of you on the council have. Just as I looked at this whole area here, and they did, to the south, they did do some remediation, some grading, burning, kinds of things like that many years ago, because the water came down that way too, at their own expense for whatever that's worth.
Gentlemen, input?
I'd like to hear some sort of an answer to one of your questions, and that is how bad the problem is. Can you go fishing there for several days after a rainstorm, or ankle deep, washing away your lawn?
Next.
Go ahead.
Since the reconstruction in '99, standing on our property, which is 316, looking up to Bergen Circle, we could never see the pavement before. With the new construction, we can. And then the water before the new construction up there, we never had the water run off down there like it is now. It's 5 times worse. It's puddles. Mark has photos. You want to share the photos? No, the flooding. This is it. This is the water we get, and that's with an 1.5 inches of rain all the time. It's eroding all the pine trees that we have on that property that goes down there. And we've addressed it. And those scuppers or whatever were purposely put in to divert the water onto other people's property. We have roof water, we have nature water, everything that's coming down to us. It comes across Pavick's backyard, it goes into my driveway, washes out the end of my driveway every rain. You can drive by there anytime there's more than 1.5 inches, you'll see the gravel's out in the street. And we had it paved at one time. But I don't think this is something any of you would like to have in your backyard. And you can't even get back there to mow after, for days. That is ankle deep or more. When it comes down there like that, it's deep.
And I don't think anybody disagrees that this is not a problem by any stretch and that it's not a good thing. I think the question is going to become, to kind of focus here is, but to try to get this to the bottom line, I guess in effect is, Is it your contention that this is 100% city, nothing else is contributing to it? And because I guess what I'm getting at is you have houses up on the hill there that are contributing to this, and that's not a city responsibility.
Right.
So, and that's one of the things to keep in mind here is this is kind of a collective.
Right.
It's not just one thing. And so that's just something to keep in mind as far as, and it, you know, as far as the street goes, then if you're seeing a street that was a higher elevation, you're saying, then something was majorly screwed up.
Probably.
And in looking at that and Joe looking at that, I have to say I can't see that would be the case, that it would be this much higher. After, it should be lower, and there's no evidence to show based on the elevation that it would have been that much higher. That, you know, just as an untrained, you know, kind of eye would see that. Now, before that thing was reconstructed, Joe, the odds are there was one or two things. There was either no curb, which means that water would have come right over, or
Correct, it would have ran off everywhere.
they put surmountable curb on. They had surmountable before, and then they installed new surmountable, and again the water came right over. The water comes off of that cul-de-sac and goes down that hill, regardless of those drainage ways being there. We've talked about this. The drainage ways were cleaned out. There was vegetation in them. Now, you know, we've talked about the drainage ways could be sealed up again, so the water can't go down it. But my concern, and this is more Joe's purview, but just is the water's not going to be controlled. It's going to go again all over the place because it, after a certain level, which probably isn't that much, it comes right over that curb and right down that hill. Regardless of those things being there, you know, it still goes over that curb because that's how it was designed, for good, bad, or otherwise. That's how they designed it, was so that, you know, it might slow a small amount down.
Yeah, it's typically 4 inches. The old style surmountable curb back, just kind of familiar with, would be about 4 inches high.
Yeah.
So if we were to physically come in and board up those two spillways, the water would pond down the street to a depth of about 4 inches, and then it would actually get over the top of the curbs and start to flow down the boulevard and still follow the same course it follows now. The problem would be, though, now you'd be ponding water on your public street, which number one is going to deteriorate your street and cost the city money in maintenance in the long term. But the bigger issue is that now it does cause a public safety hazard because now you're creating a safety hazard on your public street. And if somebody, you know, if it were, say like in the fall or the spring where that water was on the street and it froze and somebody was in an accident or slipped and was injured or whatever because of a condition we caused by not draining the street properly, now the city could be, you know, liable for public safety by creating that hazard. So I wouldn't recommend plugging the spillways. I mean, the water needs to drain off the street. It did drain off the street. I mean, what I'm seeing, they show the plans show the existing profile of the old road. You know, how the drainage, how the elevation of the road laid, and it all from about the corner, which is the bend in the road, it all drained towards the cul-de-sac. The old road did before it was reconstructed in '99. Now, so it all came down to the cul-de-sac and left the road at the cul-de-sac. Now, I don't know if there were spillways there, I don't know if there were curbs there, but eventually it all went that way, went down the hill and found its natural course. The new road, as I said, was reduced in area a little bit, but the overall drainage pattern from that corner still drains down to the cul-de-sac, except now it's controlled with the curbs, and it discharges at those two spillways. Once it gets off the road, it's still, in theory, is following the same course as it followed before '99, which is
More concentrated.
yeah.
So Joe, I have a question, and I know that Judy had brought this up early on. Maybe not a question, but the question being the whole thing about cleaning those drainage ways out. When they had vegetation growing in them, do you think that water still went through those when it hit a certain level?
Oh, it certainly would, yeah.
Well, yeah, but more dispersed. Without those two steppers in there, the water was more dispersely going over the hill. Now we have it dispersed in two steppers, which also their rain gutters are going out to Bergen Circle, so then it diverts that water also down onto us. And when they did 99 construction up there, they asked Bay Goldhammer, they asked us, and I don't know about Weenies, about putting a culvert in on that property right there. And it was a big old culvert with a grate and big stones. And we said no. We didn't want water pushed onto our property. And there should be, I would imagine, an engineer that had a blueprint that should be around with that culvert in it, because that's what they showed us. That can't be found, but there is one, and the neighbors can say that there was. So anyway, this is the new one now.
Was the city proposing the culvert, or was one of the people building the homes?
The city was.
I guess I
Oh,
apologize.
yes.
I apologize, I'm not
And they
familiar
never
with
changed
it.
it.
Oh, okay, so here's the deal with that. We have not been able to find anything on that.
Well,
What
yeah.
we have now is the final plans from the 99 project, the as-built plans. We don't have, if there was a discussion on, or if they had brought up, Stantec, at that time Bonastro had brought up different options or things like that for project design. We don't, unfortunately, I haven't been able to find anything like that.
But you have my word, you have the neighbor's word, and that doesn't mean anything?
No, it does mean something, but again, this goes back to where we're at now. And if you had that there, you would have had all that water coming down the hill.
But that's why they wanted the culvert in, is to purposely divert that down so it wouldn't go down the other Bergen Road, because there's no culverts. It was a cheap way for them to get by and save money by dumping it onto our property. And, the only thing, put a drain field tile in out to the street to Trenton Road. It's alleviated. I don't expect people to tear up the roads and everything, but this is ridiculous. And it washes, it's eroding. And I couldn't have anything, I couldn't have a playhouse back there if I wanted to.
Well, a couple of things is, I'm not sure that the flow is more concentrated now than it was in 99. I don't know what the condition was before the road was built. I know it drained down to the cul-de-sac and left the cul-de-sac. Typically, when homes are built, you typically try to divert the drainage to flow down the lot lines. These two spillways are located at lot lines, so they're probably, in essence, trying to mimic what was there before 99. So I don't know if the flow is more concentrated now than it was. I know that the flow, from what I can tell, generally before 99, flowed down to the cul-de-sac and left. Now from there, it naturally is going to flow by gravity down the hill. Now it flows to the back of the cul-de-sac, gets to the two spillways, and leaves the cul-de-sac, and it flows down the hill. So in the grand scheme of things, the drainage pattern after 99 is similar to what it was before 99. And the surface area of the public street, which contributes to the public portion of that drainage, is smaller after 99 than it was before 99. So the city's contribution to that drainage is equal to or less. So the project didn't make the city's contribution to the drainage any worse. Now, there really is no, I'm not sure what the design might have been for a culvert. When I look out there, nothing, when I walk out there, I don't strike and say, oh, I could put a culvert in here that would alleviate the water. The water is still going to want to go down by gravity to the bottom of that hill. And whether it flows over the hill or whether it flows through a pipe and discharges at the bottom of the hill, it still will reach the bottom of the hill. So I don't know what the design might have been. But when I look at it now, the idea of the drain field, it may work, but the city has no land to do that.
But we have.
The city to do a drain field, you'd have to acquire easement rights or acquire property somewhere in there to be able to drain the water out to it and get it into a drain field.
We're trying to say something.
There is no easement for this water right now. None. That's
Water doesn't
private
need
property.
No, yeah, that's correct.
That's private property.
Yeah, but water doesn't need an easement. In Minnesota, water flows where water flows.
But this is diverting it with the
But
sky.
it always was doing
No, it wasn't just
that.
concentrated.
But that's what Joe said. It always was going to flow
Come
down.
see what Mother Nature does. I mean, Hanky was up there. You can see where the pine needles are washed away every rain. Fred built a house up there. He had dug out up for a basement. He said, go up higher because the water's running this way. It's history. It's been there. And it made it's worse.
See, Joe, just, we could talk about this all night, but the one thing I curious about these curb cuts. Is the curb cut there to the north lower than the curb cut to the south? So most of the water is going to the curb cut to the north, which goes directly behind the place. If the curb cut to the south was lower, it would kind of, I think the original intention was to kind of go between those two houses. It had that curb cut between 222 or 322 and 318. So is there something there that's been planted or built up so the water cannot go that way? I think maybe some investigation, and like I say, we talked about this all night, and I think we need more information and to see what's really been done. Why is the water going so much more that way instead of the way that I think they thought it kind of really was intended to go?
And to try and answer your question, the answer is I don't know.
I
I
think
mean, from the one plan sheet I've seen, I don't know, it doesn't indicate what the elevations of the two spillways are. We'd have to go out there, we'd have to survey, go all the way back to the high point, which is essentially the corner.
Actually,
We want to survey both curb lines coming down to see, is one over the other. We'd have to shoot those two spillways and try and identify.
that's real simple to do. So if the one spillway is kind of to the north there is lower, naturally that's going to take most of the water.
Yeah, okay. I got something to bring in on this. I was up there Sunday night and walked through her with it from the curb itself all the way down. And I also talked to another individual where the water flows towards the south. And that particular individual kind of got the indication that, hey, we're going to have problems. So he, because all of it is channeled down just like it's supposed to do, go between the houses. As of today, which I spoke to him, and a heavy rain, it will come within about a foot. He built a brim in there some time ago when this was being constructed. And that's how it channels the water down. So if we even changed it around, the balance of the two flows, and his was lower or higher, we're moving the problem from one place to the other place, or creating both of them having problems. Now going back to her, we walked the whole thing, from the curb all the way down. We'll tell you this here, and I'm saying it the way I seen it, was it's a good waterway. Everything down there, it's like a fan and it flows out as it goes, and it heads towards the old railroad track towards the north. Now she's saying about her trees. I will agree with her. It's the roots that are showing on there. But I did not see any erosion, which you really say erosion. There is some buildings in there. I did not see any of those buildings having a problem. As a matter of fact, they were above. They were above because they anticipated the flow. So it goes away. So eventually it spreads itself out with it. An answer? No, I don't have it. But I think if we move some around from one, we take the problem away less here and create more over here. So the one to the south, I think I would personally let that.
Okay, when you say it goes to the old railroad bed, once it gets to the old railroad bed, is it capable of heading to the north then? Or is there a blockage?
That I don't have the
It's
biggest
still,
idea. All it goes is down.
gullied out.
Yeah.
So
At
I
that
mean,
point.
is there just, by just going in there and making more of a swale so the water can go into that gully?
Well, it's a dead-end property. It would pool quite a lot. I mean, if you directed it down to the north at the end of our property, and then there's that fountain fence, and then our property at Engelman's, Engelstead. But it's a deep, it's just a deep gully. I mean, you could get a car down the width of it, but it's
She's talking of the railroad bed.
the old
Yeah,
railroad
The
bed.
railroad bed. The rest of it is pretty
It's not
level.
flat.
Completely level.
Can you get this water to go to that gully?
Well, yes, you could,
With a tile line.
but it's gonna be an expense. You're gonna have to literally start up at the curb and channel it all the way. So you've got
No.
300 feet
More.
that you'd have to actually do this with.
Where this ponding is, how far away is that from the old railroad bed? This pond right here.
Well,
I don't know. if you can show
That's
it. Right in
what
front
she's
of-
showing me there, and that is the curb line up there, and that's the water coming down. There's quite a few pictures in here of it, and like she says, it'd be at least 300 feet.
Do you have the other
You'd
pictures?
have to,
Not up here, I
I
just,
think it's pretty tough to kind of picture this. because that whole
I've
street-
got them, but I didn't put them on.
I'll show you, Fred, where that would be. Okay, this is back with babies, coming down. A lot of the trees. This is looking, towards the south from that swell where we have that water going in. This is going
I'm
south.
I'm kind of concerned about, I mean, this is normal.
Okay, but yeah, I'm getting there. This is the one. Where's the one? It's not in here, but I do have a picture of it where it looks north on our property, where it just lays out there, and it's just the mud hole. But I do have it on my phone, I can show you a video.
I guess I just, hard to picture.
that's why you gotta really go out there. I looked at it, and I really wanted to know what it was about. So it's well worth the walk to get a good vision of it. But it's pretty level, I mean, it flows down, but the surface of the area all the way around is pretty smooth. There isn't any gullies or anything of that sort in it. It just literally flows away, and it goes into this ditch, or I mean into the old railroad track area, so. But I would say this year, if you work to take care of that particular situation, and what about these other individuals that have already spent their money at building up the brim so that the water doesn't come into theirs? We're kind of opening up a can of worms.
The only thing is, if I build a brim, what good would it do with the elevation of my property compared to the other neighbors on the south? It does me absolutely no good.
And I agree with you.
And why should I go to that expense when they screwed up Bergen Circle?
So, you've got, what we talked about, options are either, depending on, would be to get more information from Joe to answer a couple of some of the questions that have come back. If you want to look further at this, from that to actually trying to do more of a formalized study. And I think we've done some of the items that would be involved in the study. But I mean, that option is there. And then if there's drainage, that's a real dicey thing is how that would be handled. Like I said before, the city's end of this comes more at Bergen Circle. If, and again, you had a street that didn't have storm sewer before, was reconstructed, wasn't put in again. If the contention is it should have been put in, I mean, that was 20-some years ago. And that could be one of your contentions is that it should have had storm sewer put in at that time.
Well, because they originally planned the culvert, so we
Right.
said, no, they should have done storm sewer, and they didn't.
So that's part of your focus on your, like when I talked to you guys before, is you kind of put your eggs in a basket of, okay, what are things that, we're involved with as a city, and what are the things that are privately impacted, like those homes? And those are the things that we could talk all day about, us taking care of them, but we won't and we can't, because that's not our thing. So that's part of this. But again, this comes back to, this really comes back, there's, to whatever would happen back then. And, you asked if we believe you or don't believe you. It's not a question of that. When you talk about what the city, said they could propose to do, if we don't have it in front of us, we've come here 20 years later, we have nothing to react to. So we can't just go by if you tell us, or even if one of the council says, I can't go by that as a material thing, what I can do is try to find a material thing like that.
Yeah,
But what we go by is the finished product. And, Joe, I don't know if there's any other way to put that, but I mean, there could have been things that were talked about. There are meetings and who knows, but again, unless we can find some proof of it. But even if we do, it wasn't done and it's 20 years later, so I don't know, I'm not sure how that's gonna come into play now. Because the claims now, at least have come now, if you started a claim 20 years ago
oh, yeah, it's been ongoing since.
and documented and came and said, we still, we started this 20 years ago, but what we have now is, it's come to us now 20 years later or more, since 99. And that's not saying that there may not be a problem, but what it's saying is, if you'd have come right away back then and it was documented, then you would have said, I've been fighting this for this many years. And all we have is, since I've talked to you guys in the last, 9 months or whatever the period of time is, what we've been able to find now. So it makes it harder to try to figure out, what might have happened back then, because we just have how that street was finished. But the city's property right away is that Bergen Circle. And so that's what, if there was any discussion of any alteration, it would be that road. I don't even think we'd want to get involved with the hill or the property at the bottom of the hill. Is there anything that can be done on the surface to change the drainage that's not going to cause a safety issue, denigrate the road in a rapid fashion, stuff like that? And then secondly, is there a longer term thing that could be done, or should be done, is probably the way to put it. And that's really where I think the city's focus would be. It wouldn't be on the bottom, because again, there could be drainage coming from other places. There is from those houses.
Yes.
And so we would need to look at that cul-de-sac,
My thought and
if anything's looked at.
thought, if they could put like a filled drain tile and with an easement, if you need to be, from that swell and then down along our property lines out to Kenyon Road. Because actually there's no place for that water to go north. Because it goes flat and then it goes down. And I don't know who owns that right now. But that to me would be the simplest and easiest thing to do. I mean, farmers put that stuff in all the time and it seems to work for them. So I would appreciate if any of you guys wanted to come up and look at it. When it's raining, come on up.
And like I said,
Anytime
I
an
think
inch and a half, you'll see it.
there's no question that there's a lot of water down there. No
Yeah.
question at all. And we've seen it, and it's
And we really, and I don't mean to, I don't want to say this the wrong way, but boiling it down to its essence is, there's a certain amount of runoff that comes off the city street. We could try and do something different to manage it as it leaves the street, but if we were to go in and put a drain tile at the bottom of the hill, now at that point, we're trying to manage not only what's coming off the city streets, but also what's coming off all the roads
that's what I'm
and all the
talking
other
about.
yards. So now we're getting into managing way more than just what's coming off of Bergen Circle. And I don't mean to put this sound the wrong way, but I haven't heard that there's been any physical property damage, flooding of the homes or the garages or the sheds that are out there.
The neighbors behind us to the east, they were flooded last summer with water.
Okay, but now they're neither of the ones that, they're neither you nor your neighbor that.
But water that runs down from the circle goes down across my northeast in the valley.
Okay. But when I came out there and met with you and Mark on site, and your other neighbor was there, that's neither of you that you're referring to. That's
No.
a different, that'd be further.
Right.
Okay. And I don't mean to, when I use the word nuisance drainage, that's like a term of drainage where it's, when you get water that puddles, that gets to be, ankle deep, where after a rainstorm, you go out there and there's water that's 2-3 inches deep, and it might sit there for 48, 72 hours, and then even for another 48, 72 hours, it might be mushy when you walk on it. That's that's a nuisance drainage problem. Now, private property owners can certainly undertake any improvements they want on their own property to try and reroute the water, to direct it in other fashions, you know, without stopping it, but to improve that situation on their property. You know, it's not necessarily the city's responsibility to do that.
Unless what they're doing discharged it onto someone else's property.
Right, you
that's
still-
impacting before.
Right, the water still has, as the attorney's indicated, the water has to have the right to flow. I mean, the city has to have the right to drain its public street, and the water has to be managed as it goes down the line. So the question is the city improperly managing its water as it leaves Bergen Circle? From what I've seen and heard, at this point, I haven't seen any evidence that it is mismanaging it.
Well,
I'm not sure, I mean, there is no, it is a, you know, there is no storm sewer up there, so there is no city storm sewer we could easily put a structure in and connect to a pipe to get an underground system. The drain tile system it'd be very difficult, if not impossible, to install in the right of way. There are underground systems that you can, underground tanks that you can use to retain storm water and release at a slower rate. Now, that's something we could put under the actual cul-de-sac, which would, dig up the cul-de-sac and put an underground storage tank to try and collect that water, hold it, and release it at a, to modify but we aren't going to change the area that's draining there, because the lay of the land is the lay of the land. The homes that are there, the front yards that are there, the streets that's there. So we're really not going to be able to change the water that's coming from the public street. And it's trying to get from where it is at the elevation of Bergen Circle to the lower elevation. So
Another way to look at this is from your standpoint, Connie, is a claim against the city. Because many times there are situations where incidents or things happen, and people, the only answer we can give people is that you have to file a claim against us. And that is certainly, with anything, you've always got that option, but that's certainly an option that you and the other property owners could take is, if you don't get satisfaction from this, is to file a claim, against the city's insurance and say that, what's gone on, and go that route. So regardless of what happens, you still always have that to fall back on.
right, and there was at one time, and I don't know if anybody remembers this, the fire department drains their hydrants every year. Well, they were draining it right down that swell. And I had new grass seed planted down there and a doghouse, and it washed it all away. And the city did compromise and, took care of that. So that's telling you right there and then with that excessive water, rainwater, coming down there, what Mother Nature does. And it's excessive. It's not just, when it's just diverted. And it's the elevation, another engineer looked at that and he said it's slanted towards you guys, no doubt.
Oh, certainly, the street drains towards Bergen Circle.
It drains
But
down,
it
it
did-
drains
But
east.
it did before as well.
But that's,
No.
see, that's not the question is which way that water drains, because that water is always drained down that hill, and when that street was first put in, the water drained down that hill in some fashion. So that part of it isn't anything that's,
Yeah.
you could contest. I think what you're saying is after 99 it was worse,
Yes.
but to say that it drains that direction, well, yeah, it's always drained that direction. It probably drained that direction before the street was ever put in there,
It's, like I said, it's more directive
but that's
and,
not the,
and concentrated. It is what we see from it, not what the blueprint says, but it's what we see and what we have that tells us that. So I just think, look at it a little bit and see what you can come up with.
Well, the prints after the latest construction is what is there. It's not speculation, it's what's there.
Yeah, certainly, we can have a surveyor go out there and take a bunch of shots to try and verify that what the print shows is there, but in general terms, I I believe the print is correct. I mean, I believe that the general drainage pattern was there before 99 with the old street and is still there now with the new street. So,
And when we talked about liability, though, again, you've also got those two houses up there above your hill,
Yes.
that water comes off of them and goes down also. So that's
Especially-
part of the whole scenario, when you talk about a claim, that's part of it too. I'm not saying that there's a verifiable claim or not claim, but I'm just saying when you talk about potential action, those are the properties water's coming off of.
Oh, like especially, oh yeah, because their rain gardens
So that's
are
part
going
of
that way, so it's,
the drainage
that's
coming down the
much more
hill.
concentrated in, with the elevation the way it is. So I never really complained, I never complained before until after that was redone.
Connie, yours is the house that's the front, you've got the long driveway, yours is the house that's the front.
Mhm.
When was your house constructed?
We moved in 91.
Okay. Did you build new or was it already there before?
We built new, so, you know, we knew, you know, what the layout of the land was, but we never had an issue with water like that back then. And you can ask the past neighbors up there what it was like. 'Cause it just didn't, we didn't, I don't know why, but it didn't happen until after the new construction.
Okay, thank you.
How many houses were there up there in 99 at that time when this was reconstructed?
There's been no new houses put up in Bergen
Were these
Circle.
all there in 99, all of these that we show in this picture?
Yes. There's been no land change alterations to the landscape, none.
If that's the case, that nothing has been changed except the street, and the street is not higher now than it was before,
So,
what has made a change? He says she can see it now that couldn't before. Something's not making sense here.
I have a
Right.
video of it.
I
Later on, I
think-
can show you guys on my phone.
Well, I think that goes back to, I think, you know, everybody realizes that there's a lot of water coming down and there's a lot of water
But you can see the
ponding.
direction of it on the video more.
Mark, do you have a plan sheet in the packet? Can you bring it up on the screen?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
For the street?
Yep, right there.
Can you rotate it? Because right now it's sideways.
Yes, I believe I can.
Okay, so what this is showing, this dash line here is the elevation of the old roadway. So you can see there was the high point of the old roadway, which essentially was at the corner. And you can see the old roadway drained down like this, and the dash line, follow the dash line. And this is where the road ends, so that it comes along and comes down the hill, and it keeps going. I think there's probably even more off the screen we can't see. Each one of these grids is 5 foot in elevation. I know the plan that I've got, it actually shows it farther. There's at least 20 feet of elevation drop from about here till it gets down to the bottom of the hill. Now this heavy black line is the grade of the new road that was designed. So you can see they lowered the road when you first came in off Kenyon. But here's the high point of the new road. So it's essentially right in line with the high point of the old road. And you can see the road got lowered here, essentially matches the elevation of the old road here all the way back to the end. So the old road, you know, didn't drain this way before, and the drainage was reversed with the project. The area of the road that drained before was from here to here. The area of the road that drained after the project is from here to here. And then nothing was changed from the back of the cul-de-sac out. So that, I mean, in essence, that's what the plan sheet shows us.
So can you show me exactly with that elevation where our property would be?
Your property would be somewhere over about here. And this would be right about where the road, when you come in off of Trunnion Road and the road takes the 90-degree bend to the right, that would be right about here. So this would be going out towards Trunnion Road. This would be going back towards the
You
cul-de-sac.
mean Bergen Road?
Yeah.
No,
Or Bergen, is it Bergen Road or Bergen Circle?
well,
Bergen Street.
Bergen Street.
Bergen Circle.
Because the top is the circle, and that would be the Bergen Street or road.
Could be Bergen Circle.
all right, if you scroll up, Mark, so we can see the overview of the top. Keep scrolling. Oh, you didn't put that part in.
Doesn't have that, no.
Okay. Well, I've got the whole plan sheet here, and these, if you scroll down just a little bit, you can see these numbers down at the bottom, the 0 + 0, 1 + 0, 2 + 0. That's the stationing along the roadway. That represents footage along your roadway. So from the start, 100 feet, 200 feet, 300 feet, 400 feet, and so on. And the plan that I'm looking at, the corner, about where the 90-degree bend is in the road, so if you change from Bergen Road to Bergen Circle, I mean, I think before it used to be more of a right angle, like it was almost like a street intersection, whereas after the construction it turned into more of a smooth curve. Anyways, that's at about station, probably right about here, about 3 + 50. So between 3 and 4. So from this way it goes back down Bergen Road till you get to 0, and 0 is at Trunnion Road. So this goes all the way from Trunnion Road up to the bend and then to the back of the cul-de-sac. So this is all the way up to Trunnion Road.
I bet there's not that much water that goes down that, as it looks like it would on this diagram. I bet you anything it doesn't. It may look like it there, but I can't imagine.
Well, I
You
mean,
know, that's one thing you can count on, is water flows downhill. And you're not
Yeah.
gonna change that, no matter
But
what you do.
not the amount that you would think with this. I think it's more concentrated with it going east.
Well, I think even if 90% of that water goes the other direction, that doesn't alleviate the amount of water you guys are getting. It's still a lot of water.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't think that part of it is even worth, saying that, well, there's a lot more water coming. I mean, I think the amount of water coming down is what the problem is, whatever that is. And most of it's going the other direction, but what is coming down your hill is still causing all that ponding.
Right.
Well, maybe to look at it, maybe a surveyor should probably go and look at it. It would answer some of the questions that we have on both parties for the council and for.
See if the elevation is the same as
That's
what's
correct.
shown. Okay.
Get a little bit of a plan on it and see where it slides.
Yes.
And go forth with this somewhere into the future. Looking at it, we'd have a better idea than we do at the moment.
maybe we can certainly get a surveyor out there. And what we do is we'd go back and we'd find the high point in the roadway. And then we'd start from there and we'd go down towards the cul-de-sac. And we'd shoot the curb lines. We'd essentially cross-section the roadway so we'd have a view of what the road looks like from the high point draining back towards the cul-de-sac. And we could actually go up and take shots in the, on the driveways in the front yards too to identify those yards that are draining down towards the road. I mean, it certainly,
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Is there a way to kind of rephrase that, at least for my own benefit, not being a professional engineer, is can you look at that water coming off that street and say, okay, this percentage is going in this drainage way, this is going in this drainage way, and then what percentage theoretically, because of the impervious surface, will be coming off those two lots, off the roofs and that kind of stuff? Is there a way to quantify, X amounts coming off the cul-de-sac and X amounts coming from those properties? Is there a way to quantify that? Because that would go a long ways towards saying, well, how much is coming down that hill?
I mean, we could try to make a representation of the contributing areas. And keep in mind what gets in the cul-de-sac too is when you go back, the homes that are coming back up from the
Yeah.
cul-de-sac,
Yeah.
their driveways drain to the
Yeah.
street.
Yeah.
So the drainage from your driveway comes into the street and winds up
Right.
becoming part of the street drainage. So, we can certainly try to identify based on where the roof lines are, where the yards are sloping towards the street. We can try to identify that water's coming to the street and then what area would go to that north curb cut, what area would go to the south curb cut, and what areas would drain away from the street. So, yeah, I mean, we could put together a kind of an overview map with those areas laid out. And we could document the elevations of the street, verify that the high point is where the plan says the high point is.
Yeah, that would just give us some
That would
clarification
be useful to know exactly what there is there.
what the impervious surface is.
I'm just thinking one step ahead, when we get through all that, if we come back to the same result, we still got the same question we're dealing with.
Probably.
But
Well,
at least then you got some
may have the
clarification.
same issue, but we'll have more information about
Yeah, and you'll have more
what's
confidence,
the existing.
you'll have more confidence in what the existing situation is.
Help quantify where the drainage is coming from, to properties and the street and that kind of stuff.
I can certainly see about, getting one of our surveyors out there. I'm not sure what their schedules are right now, with construction going on, a lot of them are
Right.
need to be at the construction sites in certain places, but if we find someone, get a surveyor scheduled to come over, get those shots taken, get a map put together.
Right.
I mean, I would think we could have it ready for the next council meeting.
Good. That would be good.
Thank you.
Moving on. Item D here, forfeited property, property ID number 66-160-0216. Property has come up for tax forfeiture, we could acquire it, have no.
If there's a public use for it.
Have no use in mind for it at the time.
My recommendation with this would be to take no action at this time and just let this go to auction. Because I don't, in looking at this, we don't see public use potential for this property at this point. It's up on the map.
In which case, we need no motion or anything.
You can, but you don't need to, I think most cities just don't take any action and then it'll just automatically by default, it'll go to auction.
Do you know how much back taxes are on
What's the point of that?
it? Curious.
You don't get, you get it for nothing.
We acquire it, it's immaterial. If it goes up for auction, it's actually immaterial also. It's
I'll
no longer
take a look and see if I
situation
can
where
bring it up
pay
here.
the back taxes and acquire property. It doesn't work that way.
No, I was just curious what it was, that's all.
But it's
You
offered.
can look it up on the county website.
It's offered, I'm gonna do it right now, it's offered to the city, or any city, they always have to go through this, as part of the state statute, that it's offered, if we have we have to have a demonstrable public use for it, like the lots up in Trunnion where the park is,
Yeah,
the public use was that we were gonna put a park in there.
yeah. I agree.
So that's why this has come through here, but I'll try to take a look here and see if I can find it.
If you can go to the county website, online property tax information, put in that property ID number, and you'll have all the,
I thought maybe it was,
I should know.
We have it right here.
means
It's okay,
nothing,
just
means nothing to us.
keep going ahead out. Curiosity is all it was, what it
Yeah, I'll
was,
sign it.
the value of the land.
Okay. Well, and that taxes have nothing to do with the value
Well, based upon value.
and how many years it's been.
Well, that's true, that's why I was going back to find out what there was.
Oh, let's move on. Item 6, or item C, rather. Digital speed limit and pedestrian crosswalk signs.
We've had some discussion The Chief Lee and I have had some discussion about actually two different fronts here. One of them is digital speed limit signs. You've had requests at a couple different points from residents for digital speed limit signs. And then the second one is the crosswalk signs. And so what we did is we met with TAPCO, which is a big supplier of these kind of signs, and I have some information in the packet, but basically, I guess the first thing on the, not the priority list, but just in the requests that we've had were the digital speed limit signs. Those signs are approximately $2,200. The solar powered signs, and you have that, some of that information in your packet. They're powered by lithium-ion batteries. Joe, does that sound right?
Yeah.
The solar cells power lithium-ion batteries, and they're supposed to be able to go for 30 days. And generally, they don't really need to be recharged, but they can be manually recharged. As far as the speed limit, those crosswalk signs go, and we talked to MnDOT about both types of signs. And MnDOT, before, just until the last couple of years, I think, Joe, maybe you know more about this, but they would require that they put the signs in, and now their policy is that they will not put the signs in, and they will let local jurisdictions put the signs in, but the local jurisdictions have to pay for the signs. MnDOT has to approve the placement, the sign design, all that stuff. So they will let cities put them in, but cities have to pay for them. MnDOT won't do any cost sharing unless it's some, situation, they can, but normally they won't do that anymore. So the bottom line is the cost is about $2,200 for the speed limit signs and the crosswalk signs. To get two crosswalk signs, and they have to be ones that are activated by people crossing the street where they flash, are probably about $8,500 to $9,000 for two signs and all of the other support stuff that goes in. So they won't allow just flashing crosswalks. They will only allow now, if they're put in by a city or county, they'll only allow ones that it's like a crosswalk and you push a button and then they flash, and their preference is LED. You can also get ones that are just two bulbs, you used to see the flashing bulbs, but those aren't, I would not recommend.
No.
Joe, and I don't think we talked about it.
No, we use, they call it the rapid reflectorized flashing beacon,
There you go.
RRFBs. And we've used a handful of them here and there. They're pretty, from what we've seen and what we've heard feedback, they're pretty successful. They're primarily for where you've got a crosswalk where a driver wouldn't expect to have a crosswalk, like a mid-block, like down by Schweik's Hotel, where that crosswalk's in, it's not at any of the intersections, it's kind of in the mid-block, there's a crossing there. That would be an example where you put one of these in and the pedestrian that comes up to cross, you hit the button, and on both curb lines, these yellow beacons would start flashing very rapidly, similar to what like an emergency vehicle types of beacons would flash. And so a driver coming along would see that flashing, and they'd slow down because they realize there's something going on there, and there would be a person crossing the road. And then once the person crosses the road, after a certain amount of time, those beacons would shut off, and they'd stay off again until somebody come up and press the button to activate them again. So they're good for that type of situation where a crosswalk where a driver doesn't expect to encounter pedestrians crossing the road. So such as down by Schweik's, or if you've got a crosswalk like that near a school where you've got a mid-block crossing. They're useful in those types of applications as well. From what we've seen, they're fairly successful.
Are we really seriously thinking about this? Pardon? Are we really seriously thinking about this? Okay.
Well, that's why we're bringing the idea up we're bringing this up now.
I mean, I see people crossing and they haven't got the patience to wait for a light to start flashing.